On May 9th, 2007, it was reported that Frank Edmondson of Lake, Mississippi had signed a contract for his first children's book, Mr. Frank's Magic School Bus, Rainbow's End Adventure. According to Edmondson, the idea for the book came from his own experience as a school bus driver. Quote, "One day there was a beautiful rainbow in the sky," Edmondson said. "One of the students commented that we should go to the end of the rainbow and get all the wealth and gold that can be found there." End quote. Mr. Edmondson was looking forward to publication as soon as early fall. 700 miles away, Kansas Governor Kathleen Sebelius blamed the Bush administration for failing to provide aid after a tornado obliterated the small town of Greensburg. The Bush administration responded by blaming Governor Sebelius. This is What a Year. Welcome to What a Year, the show where we pick a year and spend 10 episodes assembling a time capsule of movies, music, and other cultural odds and ends. I'm Ethan Warren.
And I'm Ryan Pollie.
And this week we are talking about our fifth contributions to the 2007 time capsule, Kanye West's Graduation and Gore Verbinski's Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. Plus, I'm going to test Ryan's knowledge on one of the most significant cultural events of 2007. And then I'm going to be talking to writer Fran Hoepfner, who is contributing Tana French's novel In the Woods to the time capsule. So let's get into it.
We're talking about Kanye West and his record in 2007, Graduation, which I would expect you to have more things to say about Kanye West than things to say about Graduation specifically. But I could take you back to kind of my where I kind of place this, because I have, just to get this first and foremost, because this is kind of a little, maybe the touchiest subject we might get to all podcast.
Oh, definitely.
Might be the topic of Kanye West. Yeah. So I just want to go on the record and say, I am no mental health professional. I am nobody to speak. I truly am fascinated by celebrity culture, but I am not one who thinks that it is kind. I am not a person who thinks that it favors the celebrity. I do not think that these people are fortunate or lucky. And I think that we destroy them. I think our culture destroys these people. And I think and that's why I kind of wanted you watch interviews of him. I don't know. And look, mental illness plays a factor in anybody's journey, but I think a mental illness, being someone who struggles with mental illness, who's thrown it into American celebrity, I think is oh my goodness, you could not have enough support and protection. You couldn't possibly fashion a big enough shield against it. And I think that's the proof's in the pudding for this story. And so sure, I'm not saying I agree with everything that Kanye West says. I'm not supporting him in his beliefs and his political ideology and certainly not condoning a lot of his behavior. But I do understand mental illness enough and American celebrity enough to be sympathetic and to also fill in the lines with the fact that I've loved this man's art since I was a kid. So it's like even though he's the most famous person in the world, in the past 10 years, he's felt like an underdog, because like it feels like a Britney situation, but like tricky, that's a rough comparison, except for the fact that it has to do with American celebrity and how pounded these people get with, with attention and with judgment and with, and like
expectations and judgment.
Yeah.
And punishing people for not meeting our judgments and expectations, and punishing them for meeting them, and just punishing and punishing and punishing, I think.
Yeah. But at this time, this is his third record. College Dropout, the first one. Late Registration, the second one. I got into College Dropout a little late and was super on board with Late Registration, like through all the singles. So like he was like a huge artist for me. High school, in my Jeep, like listening to Late Registration, obsessed with the arrangement and the orchestration that was brought to hip hop by John Bryan and by Kanye in Late Registration, and it was a true artistry that was is super highlighted in the look backs about Graduation through the battle between him and 50 Cent. Basically, they had this thing where it was like they were friends and friendly about it, but they like wanted to use the media to kind of like compete to drive album sales for both of them. It's awesome. Great. But people look back on it also thinking about how 50 Cent kind of represented gangster rap and kind of that kind of culture. And Kanye was like this different futuristic 80s, like, well, I guess he wasn't yet, but he was trying to do things with rap that weren't like, that were breaking out of maybe what people were used to hearing on their local stations, and was kind of an underdog in that way at the time too. And so the third record,
I think futuristic applies to this record. Are you saying it didn't to the last couple?
Yeah, maybe didn't. Maybe didn't in the first. I mean, I would say so, but now he is synonymous, I'd say, with futuristic, whether it's Yeezus or 808s and Heartbreak, or I think he's known for progressive hip hop music, or just progressive music in general. And this though, to me, was at the time was like pass kind of, because not saying that some of the tracks were undeniable. And I remember when Stronger came out, like getting it off of Napster, or maybe LimeWire, my senior year of high school. So it like hadn't come out yet, but it was like the leaked single, and it was the Daft Punk sample. And it was just, you had never heard hip hop like it. And it was like, holy shit, this is going to be incredible. And the thing is, looking back on it, it was incredible. I just held him to such a high standard, kind of like the Neon Bible thing, where like this felt a little watered down, a little bit more like pop reaching, and less risky. Like there were more skip tracks for me. Like the Chris Martin collaboration, I really didn't vibe with at the time, like really didn't like. But then going through the track list, like there's some all-timers, like some A like high level Kanye tracks. Also, I was not responding at the time because it felt like he was for the first time talking about being famous. And at the time it felt like he wasn't like hated. He was, at the time he was like loved, and he was confident and cocky and somewhat controversial, but like very, very thoughtful, very like, like kind of like quiet, but like loud in his music and really confident. And this one kind of felt like, okay, we get it. You have a lot of cars and money and jewelry. Like at least that was my perception of it at the time. But looking back on it and now thinking about like how much American celebrity and fame has fucked him up, to go back to when he first was getting it and was becoming a stadium rock star, and like kind of the only rock star to point to in rap, like the only person who was touring with U2 and Rolling Stones, certainly. And 50 Cent would never been on that bill, but Kanye wanted to push the genre in that way. And this record was the start of his electronic push that went into 808s, that went into his future work, that inspired Kid Cudi, that inspired Drake, that really created this new genre that wasn't sample heavy, that was kind of these electronic songs that had hip hop over it. And that's kind of like, that got over the whole having to pay for samples thing. That got, it got over a lot of hurdles, but it also brought hip hop into the pop mainstream in this way that it had been, thanks to TRL and MTV. But this even more than like, I think Ja Rule or Jadakiss, or, like this breaks through to this almost, I dare I say, like kind of indie, the records he was listening to at the time were indie rock. So, certainly this can be placed almost, it's not surprising that me as a person, that I'm talking about MGMT, I'm talking about Dan Deacon, I'm talking about Animal Collective, that this record, it's not that huge of a stretch to be hearing at a party MGMT's Kids and then next Kanye West's Stronger, right? Because it's like part of this electronic new thing that is just kind of happening across most genres, but really in hip hop is starting to come to a head.
Well, we've talked about, this is 5 albums and now 4 of them are sample albums.
Well, but that's the thing, right? Is this record has really good sample heavy tracks. Like, for example, The Glory is like classic Kanye Chipmunk soul, and then
Stronger with Daft Punk.
Stronger with Daft Punk. But that's a crazy sample. I mean, that's one of the boldest. Wow. And led to him, collaborating with them straight ahead on Yeezus, which for original music, which I say is even a step further. I think Yeezus is arguably his strongest work, like kind of Library of Congress type of work. But I think that, yeah, a lot of these tracks, like Can't Tell Me Nothing, a lot of the hits were him thinking about these like writing rooms, thinking about like, oh man, Chris Martin, like I want my song to sound like when he comes out and plays at the piano and he's singing, when people like freak out and the stadium erupts, like I want to bring that to rap, that kind of like anthemic piano based like walkout song. And he was like, cool, like I'm gonna just call Chris Martin, or like, you know, like he like went to the source, which he's always done. He's like with Odd Future, with anybody who's coming up in the scene that he fucks with, he just picks him up and he's just like, come meet me. Or like he's like, Seth Rogen, I like your movies, come sit in my limo, I'll play you my new album. Like he's just one of those people who's like into someone, he grabs them and just like works with. And even people he's like just thinks are controversial, like Marilyn Manson now, he'll just like grab and be like, oh, you're in the court now, like cool, I want to work with you because it'll get me a headline. Like he works in that collaborative space that I can't quite understand. But well, to play devil's avocado though, this is not a feature heavy record. This is more of a songs record. I mean, 808s and Heartbreak is definitely a step beyond that, but this, compared to Late Registration and College Dropout, is more of a songs record without a lot of featured artists except for like a couple. And that's what I think he wanted to do. He wants to be a rock star. He wants to write tunes. Like he doesn't want to sample shit. He wants to go write a song that's going to be his and his only, that will live forever. And he did that with Graduation. But in the interviews, like, yeah, that stunner shades, neon colors, big stadium arena tours. But the interviews, like super cool headed, really like thoughtful, really quiet. Really, it's
that really
cool
surprised me.
In time.
Yeah. To go from the sort of the cultural image of him now, and then you sent me that Q&A from 2007-ish, and how soft spoken, and how he's not the one leading the conversation, and he's not the one sort of being intentionally provocative, was a huge. I don't know, his cultural image at this point is it casts such a long shadow that to even think 15 years ago he looks the same, he is the same guy, and he is such a different guy. It was nice to hear that your first impressions align a lot with mine listening to it this week, because, you know, I've heard a lot of these songs before, but to take it as an album, I also thought, like, this strikes me as a little thin. This feels like a lot of songs about like you were saying, the just sort of the trappings of fame, and I just to know that that's a distinct difference from the last couple albums is really interesting to me, to know that he was deliberately stripping back some of the complexity.
Yeah. And yeah, I feel like the first two records were all about the struggle, kind of like, and what a struggle it was. I mean, nobody took him seriously as a rapper. They just thought, hey, go to producing, you rock at that, stop with this. His terrible car accident, almost dying, you know, being kind of like wearing polo, you know, rugbies and like backpacker, like preppy Chicago kid thing against the gangster image, like, but still making tracks that were just like just as hard in ways, you know, like, I don't know. And it was about just like, yeah, like here I am, like, but here's my experience. And like, and his experience was really, you know, relatable, but really difficult. And then this record, yeah, was like, yeah, more of the cars, diamonds, that kind of like, I've got everything, I'm on top of the world, let me tell you about it.
Well, also, like, I don't have enough sort of awareness of the spectrum of what people are rapping about. It just so aligns with like what a boring old white dad like me would say is like, oh, all this rap music is just about cars and diamonds and how great you are. And so I was like, did I just like absolutely just flip a switch and like now I can only hear this the way that like a dad in 1996 would talk about rap? Or is that genuinely like kind of what he's doing here and it's notable?
I don't know. I think that like that arrival, that fine, you know, Graduation, the cover art is a reinterpretation of the fuzzy bear from his first record who's going to school, but he's being shot out of a cannon into this neon animated surrealistic world. And I think that's this record for him. He has gone from the humble private school, whatever that is showing you. Well, that's what's showing me on the cover of College Dropout, kind of church almost vibes, or school, like academy is a good word, I think, for what the College Dropout kind of says to me from its artwork, and kind of the marketing around it. Whereas this one it's graduation. It finishes the trilogy that has something to do with, going to school. But to me, the cover art is like, it's like far beyond that. We're launching Kanye into the stratosphere.
You might say he has graduated into a different phase of his artistry.
Absolutely. But not just graduated, but graduated higher than summa cum laude, to the fact that they shoot you out of a cannon at the graduation ceremony. So I think he's just saying, like, yeah, like it's a brand new game. And then right after this record, his mom dies. And then he takes this palette and gets super, I guess inward looking, and makes this absolutely heartbreaking, scrappy, lo-fi wreck of an album that is absolutely beautiful.
Which one is that?
And 808s and Heartbreak.
808s, okay.
Yeah, and his mother's passing and celebrity, these two events that hit him within the same year, haunt him to this day, and are at the center of his adult man psyche. Are these things that happen in 2007? Getting all the fame, getting all the attention, wanting to be not just a rap star, but a pop star. And that decision and losing his mother, I feel like, are the two things in this year that send him on this really, really, really hard journey that he's been on and has not won against the obstacles along the way. And whoever could is, I guess, my argument. Whoever could. So my heart goes out to him, and I'm not saying I think I could handle a friendship or a relationship with this person necessarily, but I'm saying that, like, we're all people, and you can see how this happened, kind of. You can see kind of how he's become almost like an extreme version of a polarizing extreme. Like, it seems like this energy where he's like acting out, right? Like a child would act out. And I don't want to be like reductive there, but like that's the vibe that I feel. And I feel like that's completely understandable.
Yeah.
To want to fight against this cage that he has been put in. And it seems so horrible. Like the monkey getting prodded at, like at the zoo, so, I have nothing, I'm not condoning anything he's said or done. I'm just saying, like, yeah, I'm sympathetic to it all.
Well, what he says and does are far less sort of notable to me than the way we talk about him. And it is always really shocking to me the way otherwise sensitive people can toss aside any kind of claims to sensitivity when it comes to, particularly when Kanye was on Twitter a lot and was saying things that have a pretty classical, delusions of grandeur quality to them. A lot of stuff that feels pretty textbook to certain mood disorders.
Yep.
It does not take a huge leap to think this is a person who is in a pretty recognizable form of distress. And then you can either respond to that with any level of empathy, or you can respond to it with real sort of joy and delight in the mockery of it. And it feels like that has lessened a bit in the last few years, especially as he is maybe a little bit less public than he was, say, 5 years ago, except for well, he is not on Twitter, which is sort of thank goodness
true. But
for him.
Then he runs for president.
Right. So it's a different kind of public face. So, I mean, I have an immense amount of sympathy for any soul that is seemingly often in some form of distress, even if that distress often comes in the form of projecting a lot of confidence and projecting a lot of strength, which is, again, pretty textbook.
And not only, I would imagine, to mental health disorders, but to the Black male experience as well, to like be in the face of people who want to not believe in you and need to be confident, forward facing no matter what, and then going home and that's the only space where you can feel insecure and weak, you know. And I think that's something that he was maybe grew up being taught to do. Believe in yourself no matter what, you know. And then you know, how many times can you tell yourself that when you're dealt with like situations that nobody could have ever prepared you for? You know. And
the pressure to uphold a level of excellence and all of the expectations that come with that, I think are hugely significant.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I think that it's this like, I kind of understand this whole, like, if I'm feeling weak, I don't, you know, like with my own music, I go from recording something from thinking it's like the dopest, so cool, to the next minute being like, I'm going to delete it. Or, you know, like I've been through, and that feels unhealthy, right? But I feel like I do have a healthy relationship with my art when I compare it to the spectrum of people that I know that are artists, right? So I feel like I'm in a pretty healthy place. But to feel that top of the world to bottom within one piece of your work, but then to be Kanye West, you know, with whatever we were kind of getting at within his brain, but also within the immense pressure that comes with being one of the greatest artists who's ever made music. Like I just, you know, you see the confidence in him always, but you also see the kid in him. And like, you know, but I feel like we see the kid in everybody. Like, I feel like there is that kid that's waiting to be seen. It's just kind of like more obvious with him that you're like, oh man, like, come on, like he's just a kid. Like we all are, you know? And yeah, it just feels like he's just been like beat upside the head by culture and society and how we react to mental health illness. I mean, I think it's changed a lot since 2007, you know?
I think
how we deal with it.
Totally.
Yeah. So it's unfortunate for him that young Kanye wasn't breaking onto the scene right now, I think.
Oh, sure. So you just use the term one of the greatest artists to ever make music. So you'll go in on that? Because that's certainly how he 100%. Likes to talk about himself. Yeah. Okay.
100%. No. And that's the thing is when he says, I am Steve Jobs, I am Gucci, I don't think those two are far off. I really don't. For what he's done for music, what he's done for fashion, what he's done for culture, the gifts that he's given, the vision that he's given, the boldness, the absolute audacity and confidence that he has given art and culture since he's been producing has been one of the most fruitful artistic things in my life is Kanye West stuff. I can name you like the Common records that he was making at the time during Late Registration and Graduation that were basically just throwaway beats for those two records go in my like top 50, you know, top 100. Like those are huge records for me too. And I think that he is just so good that it's on another level. So then to be also blessed with that mind, which we haven't even brought into this scenario, like we've been kind of talking about him like he's a good artist, but in my opinion, we should be reframing everything we've been talking about in the sense of this man is a genius and is a troubled genius, sure, which I don't think is the only way a genius can exist. But yes, he is an example of a troubled genius, I would say, but a genius nonetheless. And yeah, I think that my favorite producers of all time, one of my favorite rappers of all time, one of my favorite artists of all time, incredible. He's an incredible, incredible mind. Now, when he starts saying, I'm the same as... And then some of the names he said, sure, some maybe I'm like, all right, come on. Like, you know, if he's like, I'm Gandhi or, you know, there's certain comparisons. He likes to compare himself to a lot of people. But Steve Jobs, certainly, aesthetic-wise, marketing-wise, just that eye, that futuristic eye, changing the genre, changing music. Absolutely. Gucci, yeah. Pair of original Yeezys in 50, 100 years. Woo. You better believe it.
So let me ask, at what point does he become a genius for you? When do you start confidently using that word, or would you be using it in 2007?
I mean, I talk about this a lot within the context of soccer, actually, but I think like you can talk about it easily now because of the breadth of his work, right? Like it's always, if we were like commentating on Kanye, like back at College Dropout, it's like, could you say he's a genius? It's like, well, we'd have to see, right? Because Nas had this incredible first record, maybe the best record recorded within the genre of all time, but can you really place another Nas record even in the top 20? You have this example with Kanye where you're like, College Dropout, is it a fluke? I mean, this kid produces really well, and this record's pretty strong when it comes to rapping, and like he's got a fresh perspective. Let's see, right? Late Registration, you're like, oh man, this is strong follow-up. He worked with the dude who works with Fiona Apple. Who saw that coming? The guy from Maroon 5's on this shit. Like, whoa, like this is new. You know, Graduation, Rockstar, Stadium tours, just continuing to grow. But in my opinion at the time was kind of like, oh, is this kind of nearing the end of the road for me with Kanye? I think 808s I passed on at the time too. Wasn't really jocking it. Maybe I was kind of like over the electronic landscape at that point. I'm not sure. I'd have to place myself within that. But it's only been since going back to it that I've truly loved that record. And then where are we? Yeezus, maybe?
What about Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy?
Yes, thank you. That is kind of the return to form for me. That's his like coked up Odyssey double disc craziness.
I like that one.
John, Rihanna screaming like fucking crazy Nicki Minaj verses. Insane. Oh, and Watch the Throne with Jay-Z. I mean, there's so much to come. And then once you hit Yeezus and he changes everything again, arguably you could say that for each of his records, but for me, the impact of that record, and then it's easy. It's easy. It is easy to say that Kanye West is one of the most important artists of my time being alive, and for a long time to come, for sure.
I just had to look up the cover of Yeezus to remind myself of which one that was, because I track them more by album covers.
Yeah, it's like a blank CD.
That's the image, yeah. So,
but that's my story.
That's your story.
With that record, and I'm sticking to it. Yeah. What do you like it? The singles? Do you have a favorite track? Like,
I mean, Stronger just jumps out undeniably, and
did you remember all the singles?
I didn't really, and that was interesting.
Not like, did you remember the Zach Galifianakis video?
I remember a lot of the videos. I went and looked at the videos today.
Do you remember the Can't Tell Me Nothing, Zach Galifianakis?
I do remember that.
Right?
No, God, of course. Yeah,
so good. Yeah. Will Oldham, right? The other dude?
I don't remember.
Bonnie Prince Billy. Is that his name?
I don't know. Bonnie Prince Billy? I don't know Bonnie Prince Billy's name. I was struck by the very 2007 CGI effects in the Stronger video. It's like, that feels like it looks like any number of Razor commercials that I've seen in the years since. Yeah, I don't know if I like this. All of the Kanye baggage comes with it for me at this point, and I'm thinking about the way we talk about him, and it bums me out. So that comes in it with me, unfortunately.
Not the way we're talking about him now.
Oh, no, sorry,
right?
not you and I. No. The way culture at large has talked about him over the years. And then I did just find it surprisingly thin lyrically, in a way that the stuff that I really liked on Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, something that I'm trying to say quickly and just comes out sounding like nonsense syllables, just gets under my skin a little bit more than this does.
Sure.
And to then it all clicked into place when I heard the sort of trying to do anthems, trying to do pop rap and the being inspired by U2 aspect of it all. Or just inspired by the way people responded to U2 and the sort of type of sound. I think
he directly has said yes, inspired by, specifically by U2. Like maybe the most talked about band when talked about his influences on this record.
Well, there you go, and not a band that I love in this day and age. One that I certainly have a long history with. Yeah,
I have a long history with not loving them.
Well, then you were just a more sophisticated high schooler than I was, but we knew that already.
No. False. I liked a lot of crappy bands, and you liked a lot of cool music when you were young.
Including you too. including Bare Naked Ladies and U2. Great bands. So you mentioned him as this pop rap, doing something different. Who else does pop rap or has ever done pop rap? What is the comparison there?
Sure. Let's talk about just his influence in general around his community at the time, right? Those Common records that I was telling you about. I mean, Common is no like up and coming young rapper that Kanye is signing to Good Music, right? Like, I don't think Good Music exists yet. Like, Kanye picking up local young talent, that wasn't a thing, right? Because he's still kind of breaking through this pop stratosphere of like having a brand, having anything that I touch is gonna be seen and heard by millions and billions and trillions of people or whatever. I don't think there are trillions of people. There aren't.
I don't think there are. But over the course of time, it could hit trillions.
So we also have that year. We have Lupe Fiasco coming out with a record, which we almost decided to talk about on this podcast.
We did, yeah.
I mean, there's
the Cool, right?
Yeah, the Cool, and then there's Finding Forever is the Common record from that year. But I think this whole idea again of, I don't want to say that he like invented it, right? Because obviously that's not true, but this accessible, non-sampled electronic pop rap tune with like sometimes some singing like by the artist, like, I don't know, man, like that wasn't super prevalent at the time, and it was in the R&B sphere, but I feel like, you know, the image of the rap star mixed with like, you know, that like hard guy mixed with like the softer like sung stuff, I don't know, it just like it wasn't prevalent to me in my life, you know, within the rap music that I was being shown at the time and the rap music I was exposed to or whatever. But I think like, yeah, Kid Cudi coming up and Drake are I think the biggest through lines from Graduation in 808 to the birth of two giant, you know, mega stars within the genre, and certainly ones that didn't clear tons of samples, you know. And that's like, Drake makes songs, man, you know, like, and that I feel like was a different concept at the time. Like, Kanye went in the studio and like just hearing that, imagine hearing that in the room where he's like, dude, like I don't want to sample shit, like I kind of want to make songs. Like, I just toured with U2 and Rolling Stones, like I kind of want to come in the studio and make tunes. And he was already kind of doing that, to be fair, with John Bryan on Late Registration, but not really in this like, yeah, like huge synths, drum machines, crazy, like, you know, it was more mellow and more like cool on Late Registration, whereas this is like slick and diamonds and shiny and neon. And you remember the glasses with the stripes?
I sure the hell do. I was in college in 2007.
Yeah, 80s dance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hey, it was a culture shift. It was amazing. It was a great record in the context of his work. At the time, I was a little too cool for it, I think. That is my closing statement.
Your closing statement is you used to be too cool, but now you're not cool enough.
I used to be too cool for it, and now I realize that this record is freaking unbelievable. And I like know all the words anyway, but I was like, all right, whatever, you know. But it's so good. It's just so good. So yes, I've got some skip tracks, just very, very quickly, and then we'll stop this. Good Morning. Ooh. 9 out of 10. Champion, oh my goodness, 8.5. Stronger, 8.5. I Wonder, 7.5. Good Life, 8.5.
That's the one that's been playing in my head, Good Life, for like the last 15 minutes.
Can't Tell Me Nothing, 8.25. Barry Bonds, Drunken Hot Girls, pass, 5s. Flashing Lights, 8.5.
Drunken Hot Girls is the one that I definitely lost a little interest.
Oh, no. Yeah. Delete. Flashing Lights, super strong. Yeah. Everything I Am, I mean, can you argue anything but a 10 I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can. 9, fine. The Glory, 8.5 again. 9. Homecoming, 4, 3, 2.
I won't
Big
argue
Brother,
on that. Yeah.
4, 2.
Big Brother that low,
1.
huh?
Oh my goodness. That hook is so silly. And those lyrics are just weird. But there it is. No ID. He talks about No ID in that song. And No ID likes music that I've created. And I'm going on the record. I'm going on the pod saying that No ID, Kanye's mentor, has heard something that I have done and enjoyed listening to it. And so, do we want to talk about my stardom? Or do we want to move on to Pirates in the Caribbean?
It's your
And
choice.
you can answer honestly. No. Okay, fine. You'll leave it up to me. Thank you. I have been dominating the talk because we did the music first this episode. It's been a Ryan heavy episode so far. But we're going to move over to Pirates 3. But first, do we have some trivia?
First, we have a pop quiz, and this one is interesting. So this one, I have just gone to the 2007 MTV Movie Awards and just found the 3
Best
silliest
kiss?
categories they have. Best Kiss is one of them.
Yes.
And I just
Wait,
think
is it
this
multiple choice?
Oh yeah, I'll just give you the
Okay,
nominees
good.
and you tell me who won.
Oh, perfect. Yes.
Because this is just, speaking of like a time capsule, the time capsule of what were sort of the the multiplex fillers of this year is really interesting to be reminded.
Yeah, because are they on our list?
No, but then again, I'm realizing
There's not
now,
a
are all
single
of
movie
these,
from our list?
well, are all of these representing 2006 releases is a great question for one thing.
Oh.
They may
That's
be,
still
in which
okay.
case,
That's just
I'm still interested in this. So these are mostly 2006 releases. So
Okay.
fair enough, but it is still the kind of stuff we would
Well,
not be talking about here.
2007 is about award shows for 2006. I mean, come on.
That's right.
Same year.
So if you were settling down in 2007 to watch
It's like
the
my
MTV
sister
Movie
was
Awards,
arguing that Vampire Weekend's first record for anybody who was going to school at like a private school on the East Coast, like she was going to Princeton at the time. She was like, that was a 2006 record. Like all the demos were being passed around on sharing sites through all the universities, and like we all had it. And then it came out in 2007. She was like, she should do that one. And I was like, well, but it wasn't part of my 2007. You know
Fair
what I
enough,
mean?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
2006 was part of all of our 2007s.
it was when you sat down to see Best Kiss at the MTV Movie Awards.
Yeah.
So here's your nominees: Mark Wahlberg and Elizabeth Banks in Invincible, a good Philly movie. Cameron Diaz and Jude Law in The Holiday.
Whoa. Mark
Yeah.
Wahlberg and who in the Eagles
Elizabeth
movie?
Banks in Invincible.
She's the girl in
One would assume.
the year after Wet Hot.
Yeah. Wait, a year? No. Wet Hot was years and years before this.
Oh, 04.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cameron Diaz and Jude Law in The Holiday. Columbus Short and Megan Good in Stomp the
you're
Yard.
going way too fast. I have to think about these kisses. Cameron Diaz and Jude Law.
Some of these I've
is
just
like
never
one
heard
of
of.
the worst, whitest kisses you can imagine. It's just like, and they're probably kissing in the snow during the holiday, so it's just like white. It's like a sea of white.
Well, they're kissing right outside his door, I would think, while his adorable children are inside going, "Daddy, Daddy." And he says, "I am Daddy," which is the hottest anyone's
That
ever
is
made
really
that
in
sentence.
that movie?
Mm-hmm. He's Daddy.
I don't know of that scene. That is incredible that you know it word for word. But are Jack Black and Kate Winslet also nominated against them?
They're not on the list.
No.
It's
Are
hotness
they the uglier-
bias against
the uglier
Jack
couple?
Black. I'm sorry.
All right, next.
Columbus Short and Megan Good in Stomp the
What?
Yard. I tried
What?
to blast through that because I don't know that movie. And I was blasting through to Will Ferrell and Sacha Baron Cohen in Talladega Nights.
Yeah, they won.
You got to take on that. And then Marlon Wayans and Brittany Daniel in Little Man, the movie where one of the Wayans brothers plays a man who is a baby.
Wait. The Wayans brothers plays a man who is a baby?
I think
Or
one of them
plays a
plays
baby.
like... No, he plays like a guy with dwarfism who has to pretend to be a baby.
Yes. Okay. Yep. The trailer is coming back into my into the back of my mind.
So you already called the winner.
I think, I called the winner because I think it's a marketing stunt for MTV to bring them on stage and kiss again.
Will Ferrell and Sacha Baron Cohen?
Yeah, because we're still in 2007. Like, we're still kind of in gay freak out a little bit.
We absolutely are in gay freak out in 2007.
So that's what I would imagine is they come on and they're comedians willing to push the genre by kissing each other, and we're all in gay freak out.
Funny
and we're
even imagine
we're either shitting our pants laughing, or girls are screaming, or people's heads are exploding in Middle America. Yeah, so I'm gonna say that one. That's my choice.
Oh, you're right. You nailed it. It's very, very
I told you I'm
unimaginably funny
in
when
an American
two
celebrity.
men kiss.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating.
All right, so then there's the dirtiest mouth moment, which is sponsored by Orbit. That's what it's called.
Still kind of the best gum. I feel like it's still strong. I don't know about that other 5 company, that old man gum tasting. That tastes like gum that someone's already chewed, man. What's up with that?
It's only the two. It's Orbit or pre-chewed old man gum.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's the
market.
market.
I go to the source. I just collect gum from old men that they're done with, and then I have it, and it's free. And they've talked to somebody, and everybody's happy.
If you chew that 5 gum bullshit, do not sponsor this podcast, by the way. If you chew that,
5 gum?
You chew that, I think that's what it's called. It might not even be called that. If you chew that, you might as well go to the public park and pick gum from underneath the park bench and chew that. And make sure you bring your binoculars to the park, and make sure that an old man, specifically gendered man, old and man, is sitting on that bench, and make sure he's the one who put that gum there, because that's what it tastes like.
All right. So do you want to hear about the dirtiest mouth moments?
Yeah.
Now that I know how angry you can get about 5 gum. Thing. All right. So the dirtiest mouth moment is either... Let's see. Alicia Keys and Common and Smokin' Aces. A movie I haven't seen and don't remember.
I've seen it. Jeremy Piven.
You have?
Jeremy Piven vehicle.
Well, he was all the rage then.
5 gum. Do you see it? Do you see it in the screen? You know that packaging.
I do. Oh, I know that packaging. Nobody chews
old
that.
Old man's mouth. Yes. Yes.
I see it at the store and I go, oh, well, I wouldn't get that.
Yeah.
That's what I say every time I see something in the store I'm not going to get. I'm very hard to be around.
That's what you think or say out loud.
Just walk around going, not getting that, not getting that.
Okay, dirty. What are some other dirty mouths? Wait, are these kisses? No.
No, these are not kisses. I think
people though.
Yep. It must just be like people who say a lot of swears in a movie.
Okay.
Because the next one is Steve-O in Jackass number 2.
Pretty dirty mouth.
Yep.
To be fair, he's being shocked or like having things put up his bottom. So
that's fair. I would have a dirty mouth in that situation too. Dax Shepard and Efren Ramirez in Employee of the Month.
Pass.
Or Jason Mewes and Kevin Smith in Clerks 2.
Oh. You got to think MTV's behind Kevin Smith at this point. You might even think that Silent Bob was produced maybe by MTV. I'm gonna give it to that, because I don't think these are voted on. I think they're all marketing decisions, and I think that is the most likely to get MTV's backing.
You nailed it again. Clerks 2. A movie that is very locked into 2006 for me. So we're so spilling over here, and it's so regrettable.
It is very locked into forgettable.
Yes.
To me, Donkey Show. What? Is that Clerks 2? Yeah, that's it.
Clerks 2,
that's all I've got for you. That's all I've got for you on that.
Yeah.
Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Library of Congress along with Jesus. Maybe.
One of just I disagree very hard. Clerks 2 meant a lot to me when it came out. I was
gay panic.
Oh, I was right in the pocket for the like, oh, I'm Kevin Smith and like I've grown older and wiser and we're revisiting the. And it turned out he didn't actually get that much wiser.
Oh man, Kevin Smith is such like embarrassing young white man teen shit. At least looking back on it now, but it was like identity building at the time, because it was also so many other things, you know. But like it's kind of agreed that it's a little bit embarrassing now. Like how much
Well,
we liked it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because speaking of like, you can't really judge someone's legacy until they've made a bunch of stuff.
Sure.
You know, he was pegged as in 1999, Esquire did a poll of film critics to say who's going to be the next Scorsese.
Oh my gosh.
And somebody, I think Andrew Saris, picked Kevin Smith as
And I'm not
maybe it
saying
wasn't Andrew
what an
Saris.
idiot.
Andrew
It
Saris,
just shows,
forgive me.
Yeah, it just shows how important he was to independent film at the time.
Oh, he totally was. Well, he's the guy who made a movie on a bunch of credit cards when that was a much rarer thing than it is now.
He ended
did
up wanting to
genuinely
tell
interesting.
dick jokes where like Linklater wanted to like recreate the genre.
Yeah, well, and dick jokes were a revelation in movie theaters then.
Okay.
And then he just has stuck in the Jay and Silent Bob well so significantly that it just feels very weird at this point to watch any of his stuff. It's sort of freaks me out a little bit.
I will never, ever, ever forget the feeling in my body walking to see Red State in the theater. I will never forget the butterflies in my body. I was so nervous. I was so scared of what was about to happen. And to be fair, the finale of that film, I will never forget the way my body felt in the theater for that as well. So he is kind of a genius too.
Well, he is, and when he pushes himself to do something, I'm one of the Tusk defenders. Maybe I am the only Tusk defender.
That should be your next handle on like Instagram or Twitter. The Tusk
only
defender.
Tusk defender.
No, just the Tusk defender.
The Tusk defender. Well, people will think I'm just really into Fleetwood Mac, but like also don't really understand what the cultural conversation around them is.
Oh, that's so fair.
My next handle will be the only guy that likes rumors.
But if your avatar is Justin Long with like walrus tusks, I think people will get it.
Yeah, good. It's a good movie.
I still haven't seen it.
And then just the way he's doubled back to just making more Jay and Silent Bob stuff just bums
regrettable.
me out.
All right, so
Do you want to do
category?
One more category here. We
Please.
have the best fight at the 2007 MTV Movie Awards. Let's see. Uma Thurman
This
versus
might be
Anna
ripe
Faris.
for another gay kiss. Men kissing.
Interesting. You know what? We're going to get to it. Uma Thurman versus Anna Faris in My Super Ex-Girlfriend. Yeah?
Never seen it.
Yeah. Will Ferrell versus John Heder in Blades of Glory.
Uh-huh.
Sacha Baron Cohen versus Ken Devishan in Borat Cultural Learnings of America for Make Benefit Glorious Nation of Kazakhstan.
Now we've got two MTV projects up against each other. Now things get a little tricky. This is a good last round.
Jack Black and Hector Jimenez versus Los Duendes in Nacho Libre.
This is the most backed MTV project of the year, but was also the biggest flop. So going to be tough to give that an award, but maybe to get people back into the theaters. All right, hit me.
Gerard Butler versus the Uber Immortal in 300. A very MTV-ish movie, even if it's not
I wonder
technically
if they
backed by
had
them.
anything to do with that film. They certainly wouldn't mind getting behind it for an opportunity to bring him out on stage. I mean, he's like the biggest star. If they can get an appearance with him, sure, bring him out. People are going to go crazy. And to think about what that movie meant for MTV type people, I'm gonna maybe go that. Plus, then they can feel okay saying no to the Nacho Libre team, the Borat team, and what was the other MTV one?
I believe you said Will Ferrell versus John Heder in Blades of Glory would have been a MTV.
Loves Will Ferrell.
Yes.
So I'm gonna go Gerard Butler to not disappoint any of the marketing teams and say we have to pass on you guys because we have an opportunity to bring him out. I'm gonna go with that.
You went 3 for 3. You really,
yeah.
The way you logicked your way through that was like watching somebody do jujitsu.
Yeah, and I'm glad because you were like, no, we have one more. I had my answer before that. I would have said that the hardest email that marketing director had to write was to the Nacho Libre team. Because they were probably like, dude, this is the only thing you can do left to get behind this little picture that like isn't performing. Like, please get butts in seats, or maybe I guess DVD sales at that point. It's probably out of theaters if it's a 2006 film. But that movie had to have done so poorly.
I feel like that movie was a giant flop.
Yeah. But so maybe not. Maybe that wasn't the hardest email, because maybe it's like, hey, you were nominated. We got to show a clip.
I think that's the nomination is the prize kind of situation.
Speaking of Napoleon Dynamite, right? Who's that? Do you know that director by name?
Jared Hess, I think.
Okay. Anything recently?
I mean, he's still grinding stuff out. He got something stuck in development hell or stuck in unreleased hell for any number of years.
Bummer. Unreleased?
Jared
like
Hess.
Shot and unreleased?
Yeah. He had a movie that was pushed for a number of years. Masterminds. That was that one.
Oh, that's right. Did that have who? There were some stars in that. Zach?
Yeah, Zach Galifianakis was in it.
Wig?
Kristen Wiig and Owen Wilson and Ross Kimball.
Who's Ross Kimball?
And before that, there was Don Verdeen and there was Gentleman Broncos. It's just nothing's really popped since Napoleon in any meaningful way.
I bet he's upset about that, because he did some really good, like influential, awesome work with that fucking Napoleon movie, man. Wow.
I would love to read a really in-depth interview with that guy, because I bet that he's got a lot of thoughts and feelings on popping that hard and then never having anything break through again.
I'm sure.
What did we want from him? How could he possibly have pleased us?
Well, I guess at that point, if you are held to that standard, there's only one. You either do it the same or you reinvent, and or you struggle the whole time with the idea of both. And I think we've talked about that with Wes Anderson. We've talked about that with, certainly not Danny Boyle. That seems to be pretty clear. That seems to be a pretty clear reinvent strategy.
Reinvents himself every single
time.
movie.
Yeah. Yep. So maybe that was the problem there. But Boyle also works with writers, and it seems like this guy is more singular vision. So
Boyle worked with Aaron Sorkin.
Stuff.
He loves writers. Did he
now? Who did he work
Steve
with?
Jobs.
Oh, great film.
It's a great film.
Great film.
Should we talk about another great film?
Yeah.
This season of What a Year is brought to you by Mubi, who, I've said it before, I am saying it again, they are my number one favorite streaming service. And if you're thinking of hitting the little skip ahead button right now, I get it. We are all busy. But you should really listen to this ad, because I get to tell you about some ridiculously cool stuff, including a new project from Mubi that is, as I say, it is just ridiculously cool. So first off, Mubi is a curated streaming service that shows exceptional films from around the globe. They premiere a new film every single day. Might be from an iconic director or an emerging auteur, but either way, you get a little email every day introducing you to some amazing movie that, if you are anything like me, you have probably never heard of and might not ever hear of otherwise. And honestly, how many really good, exciting emails can you count on in one day? Like one? None? Well, so with Mubi, you get at least one really good email every day. So that right there is something to celebrate. And every film is hand-selected. This is not like, the mysterious algorithm. This is great cinema brought to you by thoughtful, discerning people. And doesn't that just sort of sound like a miracle in this day and age? So with Mubi, as they like to say, you get your own personal film festival streaming anytime, anywhere. But I am not just here to tell you about Mubi. I also get to tell you about Season 2 of their acclaimed audio documentary series, Mubi Podcast, which premiered this summer. And it is, I kid you not, it is essential listening. They're focusing on movie theaters this season because, again, as they like to say, in a time when too many cinemas are shutting down, it is time to lift them up. So every episode this season covers the surprising story of an individual movie theater that has had an impact on film history or just history in general. And that is the end of the official talking points. So I'm going to go off script now, because I just want to tell you that I listened to episode 5 of Mubi Podcast today, and it was such a blast, which is not a pun. And in a second, you'll get why it might have sounded like one. So this episode is about the Dryden Theater in Rochester, New York, and their event, the Nitrate Picture Show, which is a film festival entirely devoted to showing nitrate films. And nitrate is the film stock that they shot movies on for like the first half a century of filmmaking. But as you may know, it is also like the most flammable substance on Earth. And if you do not take extreme precautions with it, it can spontaneously combust, and there is literally no way to put it out. So basically, like, you know the movie The Wages of Fear or the remake Sorcerer, where they're driving with a truck full of sweating dynamite, and you know that if they hit a bump, the whole thing could explode, so you're just sitting there like freaking out the whole time? That is what any story about handling nitrate is, including this podcast episode. So all you're hearing is people talk about film history, but it feels like an edge-of-your-seat thriller. And, you know, even though you're terrified that someone's about to blow up, they also make nitrate films sound so extraordinary that, like, I'm dying to go to this film festival and see these beautiful projections, even if you're kind of taking your life in your hands by being there. Obviously, they have all kinds of precautions, and it's safer than that. But for the sake of making a point, I'm just going to say that they're taking their lives in their hands. But this festival sounds amazing. The episode is a fantastic little lesson about a piece of film history that I only knew a sliver of. So you got to listen. It's the best. Get Movie Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. I love this podcast. I would be saying that even if they weren't sponsoring my podcast, but because they are sponsoring my podcast, I get to tell you that listeners to What a Year can try Mubi for free for 30 days at Mubi.com/whatayear. That's MUBI.com/whatayear. You'll get a whole month of great cinema for free, and that kind of sounds like a miracle too, doesn't it? But it's not a miracle. It's very real. So please go ahead and sign up. I promise you won't regret it. And with that, let's get back to the show.
Yo ho, a pirate's life for me.
Good movie.
Movie.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
You put it on the list. You gotta go. You gotta go for a while.
Good movie. Well,
all right, hit me.
So the reason this movie is on the list, this is a linchpin title on this list for me. Like, there was just no question in my mind as soon as we picked this year that this has to be in there because it represents a kind of filmmaking that we just don't get anymore, and we only got for a little while, which is the back-to-back sequel saga thing. Matrix being one of the other prime examples of, we have this huge defining pop smash hit that we weren't expecting. So, oh my God, let's get some more of this as soon as possible. Why don't you just go make two of them? Go. And talk about putting the cart before the horse. You know, you have to make two movies back to back as quickly as possible and kind of figure out your inspiration as you're going. And in this case, what they chose to do was take what should have been the simplest thing in the world, just make more standalone adventures about pirates. And instead, they make this incredibly brutal, incredibly Byzantine, incredibly expensive and lavish and graphic and uncomfortable and often unpleasant and thrilling and emotional epic saga that nobody really wanted or asked for. And I think that's very special. I think this movie has a lot of amazing stuff in it. I think the last hour is a battle on the high seas inside a maelstrom that makes me care in a way that should not be possible. The way that they have just gotten me Stockholm syndromed by the end, that I care whether Will Turner and Elizabeth Swann get married in the middle of a sword fight. Two of the sort of most nothing characters there have ever been. They're making a movie. They haven't finished the script. They are writing the script while they are making the movie.
Dramatic, emphatic passion for this film becomes a bit self-aware, just in my listening.
Oh, completely. I think, yes, it is. This is an intellectual passion for this movie for me as much, or I want to intellectualize why I have a gut level response to it because it doesn't feel like it should make sense. But something, it's not a movie that had an impact on me at first. I wasn't in this sort of club.
Well, the first one certainly did.
So the first movie is just lightning in a bottle. Like,
it's undeniable.
That movie came out of nowhere. Nobody had any expectations for it. It was Disney was just.
That's one thing I didn't know. Was the idea. It's so hard to remember a time where you don't do Black Panther without already having Black Panther 2 in development, or you don't do Captain Marvel without a list of directors for Captain Marvel 2, or just this universe of kind of like, if it's that kind of movie and Disney's like putting it up and it's live action and it's 3 fucking stars, like, and it's a property, like, of course that's going to be a franchise. But I guess I have to bring myself back to a time where, like, it's a ride. So it's a bit of a stretch. It's not like this property where it's like Peter Pan starring this, it's like a bit of a stretch, kind of an original. I mean, I don't even know how they came up with that first story. Is that adapted? Is that an original screenplay literally based on my favorite Disney ride?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Incredible.
Disney was
wow.
Yeah, they were scraping so Disney was scraping the bottom of the barrel, and they just decided to make movies out of their theme park rides. And these two guys, Elliot and Rossio, who are a writing team, had this passion for the idea of doing a supernatural pirates movie, I guess. They wrote Aladdin, and going back to Aladdin, they had wanted to make
a
pirate movie. Yeah, these guys they have a really wild career. Because they are hugely influential, and then they really drop off the map. They have
those two.
Oh, you know what else they wrote?
Especially now knowing that those two, because there's similarities in the swashbuckling, sword swinging, ropes sliding, shoe tying, gum chewing, hat wearing, sheep shilling. Is that what you do to a sheep?
Shear it. It's sheep shearing, yeah.
Not shilling. All right. Anyway, I'm done. I ran out of steam.
You know what else they wrote? They wrote Shrek. And I feel like they must have largely retired just on the Shrek and Pirates cash, because if you look at their IMDb now, it's just all they get paid for every Shrek video game, every Pirates video game, every Shrek little short film. And so they hardly don't need to do that much anymore. But yeah, the first movie was a passion project that they incubated for years and years. And then these next two had to be written on the fly like the next year.
But same writing team?
Same writing team. And so another thing that I really love is that the Indiana Jones route is the easy, obvious route for this series. And it's what they've ended up doing. The last few movies are standalone stories and nobody really cares. But with this, they did latch on to a great big idea, which is, let's make these two movies about overwhelming oppressive doom and take everything that was kind of fun and in a vacuum, just pop thriller, fantasy about the first movie, and drill into the implications and say, this is a movie about the death of a world of magic. Which you get into a little bit. It's hard to talk about these as two.
Is that kind of like Calypso, like kind of parallel there?
It's sure,
right? Like the magic being contained and not free.
Well, sure. I mean, I think it's this idea of all of the sort of great magical forces of this world are coming together against the forces of just progress and capitalism, and realizing they're outmatched.
Yeah.
Realizing that's
sick.
And that's just a thing that I always love, is just sort of like the age of legends is ending. I think that is always just a super sturdy.
No, and that's something I definitely love about this film too.
Yeah.
About all these films, is that the bad guy is the man. I mean, that's always just so fun to root against, especially because, like, I mean, gosh, like the anti-hero like hasn't been pounded to death yet, and this is the anti-hero in a really fun way, that certainly is for kids, at least for the first film, but
not as much these next two,
but at least fun enough where you're rooting for these people who are looked down upon within the context of what society is. And I think that is probably awfully confusing for a child, but maybe something that a child needs to get to its goddamn little head,
that sometimes there's a monkey and it's undead.
We all need to be pirates against the redcoats, and sometimes a monkey Oh my gosh, I can't. Can you imagine your kids watching these films?
Oh, my kids who are 3, 5, and 1. That would
There is no
not go over
way.
well. No,
Can you imagine? Disney, let's go bring the kids to this.
I won't. I can't imagine, and I won't imagine. The line that I think really sums up. Excuse me. I'm drinking rum in honor of Jack Sparrow. No cause is lost if there is but one fool left to fight for it. That's the lesson that kids need to hear. Is just that image of the Armada against the Black Pearl is just so potent. Or it's the Black Pearl at that point with the Flying Dutchman with the Armada.
It's either the Dutch Oven or the Black Pearl.
Well, I mean, it just never fails to get me going when a movie says the odds are impossible. Here we go. It just always works because you just have the characters' suicidal urge to keep being heroes as your buy-in, and that just.
You would love Game of Thrones.
I wouldn't, in fact, because I don't.
Every single battle is like one person versus like a million.
Well, then that sounds
and
very
you're like,
numbing.
No way. Well, yeah, that's what I mean. It happens a lot.
It works at this because it's the end of how long? I mean, if you put these two movies together, the second and third, it's 6 hours of movie.
I'd rather not because I just did it.
I would rather do it. I'm fine with it.
I would say that I enjoyed the third a hell of a lot more than I enjoyed the second.
I was wondering about that for myself while I watched.
Which is strange. But I thought that I found 2 to be quite sluggish. Impulse to bring out the phone. I found 3 to have a I don't know. It was funny because the first scene is like this huge set piece of like them in this like Chinese underground crazy adventure with all these like houses and networks made of bamboo ready to burn down and stuff. And pretty much the only character that you know is Keira Knightley at this point. Like Orlando Bloom, I guess, is in a well, and Jack Sparrow's in the afterlife.
Barbossa is back though.
Sure.
Which is kind of
everybody screams for.
Well, yeah. I mean, they treat the ending of the second movie as like, oh, here he is.
Everybody's gonna scream.
And I do remember like having that
Samuel
feeling in the
Jackson
theater.
Just came out. No, we did not.
I remember having the feeling of just like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was the bad.
That's
the
fine.
Bad. It's not. It's the Davy Jones from the first one, right?
Yeah. Oh, I thought the whole thing was we were done with that, but okay.
I know, and that kind of felt like a little bit of what I would feel watching these films, but definitely in the third one, the Twilight Jacob Edward Bella love triangle thing, I thought was interesting, but also really confusing.
Who are you putting that mapping that onto in this?
Are you kidding me? The obvious 3. Her dad, Davy Jones, and the Kraken.
Okay.
No, Legolas, Kira the Knight, and the Jackie Jack, the Rum Boy.
Okay, so I never see that as a viable love triangle, and I don't think the movie thinks that's a love triangle.
Are you kidding me? The movie spends way too much time saying, look at this, please, audience, look at this, for you to say that's not viable. They're begging you to spend time analyzing it as if Jacob just took Bella from Edward and said, I'll protect her.
Ugh. Well, then I am just choosing not to see that then if you think it's that obvious.
They are married, or they are fiancé. Are they engaged? In the third, what is the deal? What's the relationship?
Will and
they like don't talk for a long time.
Oh, I think that's a huge problem in the movie. Yeah,
me too. But is that because he saw her like kind of kiss or almost kiss? Like there was an almost kiss, or was there an actual kiss? And then she ties him to the boat basically, and he gets eaten by the Kraken. And she thinks that she's killed him, when really he's set himself free and kind of decides he wants to try to battle the Kraken, kind of suicide mission. He doesn't try to run; he tries to take him on. So whatever, his choice. But also, Keira Knightley left him in a bad situation. to be fair.
We have to be fair.
I'm just wondering, I've been watching a lot of British people talk and listening to a lot of British people talk, and they say to be fair a lot. So now I say it. But I'm just wondering why. So they don't talk for a long time. And then she says to him, Keira Knightley to Orlando Bloom. Can you remind me what their names are?
Will Turner and Elizabeth Swann.
So Swan says to Turner, she says, the reason I haven't been talking to you, her secret is that she killed Jack Sparrow, or at least she thinks she did. Mm-hmm. And he didn't know that. And she said it was my burden to bear that I didn't share this with you. Then Will Turner kind of like flips sides and like pulls a fast one on her, kind of endangering her to a certain extent and like leaving her in the dust to like maybe all I'm saying is she gets into a lot of swashbuckling adventure that if my current romantic partner was on, I'd be certainly worried about them. And he just kind of fucks off and like pulls his deception card. And then he's like, well, like it was my burden to bear. Like, fuck you. Like I have a secret too. Sometimes I'm trying to save my dad. And that's why I like deceived you. And I found that to be like really weird because like, what was the original reason why he was kind of salty? Did he see them kind of kiss, or did he see them almost kiss? Because she says, oh, you thought that I was in love with him. No, it's that I killed him. and
how many
like,
times
so
have we all been in that? Yep.
Because I'm not in love with him. It's that I killed him and I didn't tell you. And then he gets mad enough to get them in this whole mess about that, which I would have just been like, oh, okay, misunderstanding. But he was like, okay, well, like, blah, blah, blah. And what I'm wondering is, I guess,
why any of this?
Yeah. Yeah. Can you help me out here?
Well, I think what I would say is that the Will and Elizabeth stuff is where this movie just completely falls on its face. I think nothing Will does in this movie or the last movie make a lot of sense. I mean, the last movie makes a little more sense. By the point of this one, he is, in my mind, way off the sort of chart of anything that we can follow because there's so many double crosses and he has two things going on.
Yeah.
He should have really just had the one thing going on with trying to save his fiance. Adding the father in just you need to just have one clear emotional through line, I think, here.
Yep. And I think you're showing the audience in this film, I think you are showing the audience that she does love him. And so that's why it plays off strange to me when she's like, oh, it's not that I love him, it's that I killed him. It's because like, why are you showing, I mean, I guess you're showing like her thinking about Jack and you're like, oh, it's because she loves him. And then maybe you're supposed to recontextualize that as her thinking about how guilty she is that he died. But true or false, it is played off in the film like she's horny for Jack. True or false?
I would say it is played off that she has a weird, conflicted set of urges surrounding him, and he does something to her that is undeniable.
As he does to all the rest of the ladies.
And I think that's the fun of it. I don't think we're ever supposed to, well, but maybe we are supposed to believe they'd run off together and be pirate king and queen. Maybe we're supposed to think...
because there's all these lines where she's like, we never would have worked together. And he's like, keep telling yourself that.
I think isn't that like, a callback to the first movie too? And I watched the first movie a few weeks ago. I think
that's the one I decided not to because I thought the entire trilogy of content consisted within that one movie, which I give that movie a lot of credit because it feels like a whole trilogy has been told. Totally. But in fact, you haven't even met Octopus Man who's in Love Actually, and you haven't gotten to like this whole lore that I think is like so less rich than the lore of the first film, personally.
Mm-hmm. I think that's fair, yeah.
I think even the first, you could argue, is stretched, but surely the second and third.
So they were writing the script while they were shooting the movie.
Yeah.
Which for me just has to account for a certain number of the flaws here, of which there are many.
Yeah, it's more fun to love this movie than it is to not love this movie, I'd say.
It really is. I don't know if you remember, a lady grows to be a huge giant and then explodes into crabs, which...
Second big crab scene in the movie, by the way.
That's true.
It might, in the all-time biggest crab scenes in the movie, it could be argued it's 1 or 2. And that both slots are from the same film. Name a better crab scene. I dare our listeners. Click like
Right
and
in.
subscribe.
We'd rate, review, and subscribe with your favorite crab scenes. Number one crab scenes, go.
Vulture's top 50 crab scenes of 2007.
So why this movie is in the time capsule is a very questionable decision on my part, but it feels essential to me because this movie is about itself. It just doesn't know it. This movie is about the age of huge, weird, misshapen personal visions that are also giant tentpoles. That is the armada of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is coming the following year, and it's going to just completely obliterate this type of storytelling, maybe for better, maybe for worse.
Improving on it.
See, and I disagree, but it doesn't matter.
No, it does. No, that's where that's fascinating. No,
Yeah.
but that's why it matters. Is your how could it be better? How could it be better? The storytelling within the Marvel Cinematic Universe compared to the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy, there is just no question when it comes to production value, talent, money spent on actual talent, time, preparation, vision. I mean, it's no longer about pirates or superheroes at that point. It's about bringing the most money, the best talent you can get your hands on, and telling these myth stories over and over again with drama, with humor, with romance, and with action. And these stories, these Pirates of the Caribbean movies, don't hold a candle. They just don't hold a candle.
I could not disagree more.
They don't hold a candle
so
to
couldn't
the
disagree
top
more.
10. Number one, Pirates 1 could compete, I would say, with a lot of Marvel movies, with most Marvel movies, I could say. But putting Pirates 2 or Pirates 3 against any of my top 5 Marvel movies, you don't have a chance. No way.
Yeah. That's why you won, and that's why history has favored that side. But
what are we lacking? What are we lacking? What changed for the worse in your opinion?
Style. We're lacking style.
Yeah.
This is the maelstrom fight in this movie, and the way the camera is zooming, and the choreography of the sword clanging matching with the what I would say is the last great musical theme. Yeah. I mean, for me, like, it's Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Pirates of the Caribbean.
No,
like,
fair. I think Grace said to me as she was like working while the movie was on, she was like, why does this one have one of the best ones? I don't think that's a direct quote, but why does this one have one of the best ones, you know?
Why does this movie have one of the best scores?
Yeah. I think she looks down, but I was subjecting her to 2 and 3 only.
Well, it's Hans Zimmer. I mean, Hans Zimmer is a genius, and somebody somewhere along the line said, let's do an iconic theme this time. Because you don't just accidentally sit down and write that. I think somebody has to have said...
Hans Zimmer, you do.
Well, then you would do it every single day. I think somebody must have said, let's do a hummable, little 10-second hook that you'll build everything around.
That creative pressure.
Oh, it is probably very high, and I wish I had looked up what his actual creative process was, because I probably just got it. He was like,
I voice memo. He's like, I did the demo on like my acoustic, and then I had the ideas in my head for like the other parts, but like I just needed to like sit on it, and then we tracked it. It was sick, but like, it wasn't finally polished until around 2006.
I'm just imagining now, but like Hans Zimmer, he's stuck in traffic, and he's like, Siri, take a voice memo. Ba, 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 okay, end voice memo. Mail it to me.
In the mail. In the mail. Put it in the mail. Send it to Hans.
So this is a movie with so many risks in it. Like, this is a movie that is not trying to be for everybody, and every Marvel movie is trying to be for everybody. And this movie is weird and alienating and genuinely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Doesn't a guy's head get like eaten off in like the first shot, or like eyes are getting eaten out? There's this one part
where like Davy Jones's tentacles like go through the guy's like mouth and like out his nostrils and like his ears, and he's like basically like ripping apart his brain, and like you hear like the sound effects on my sound bar were just like just
the Davy Jones Foley work. Yeah.
Oh, dude, what a gig!
So, I think
Davy
this is a
Jones
great
Foley work.
Yeah, they should have gotten an Oscar for it. Maybe they did.
Ugh.
The question of what we lost is a really interesting one to me. And I just think what we lost is genuine weirdness that is not afraid. And the other thing is, we wouldn't have been mourning this if it had kept, well, that's a stupid thing to say. We wouldn't have been mourning this if it had kept going. We wouldn't have the affection for this kind of movie. I wouldn't. The people who love this kind of movie wouldn't have this affection for it.
There are dozens of us.
Well, and another thing is, when I say this kind of movie, what the fuck kind of movie is that? Which is kind of my point. Those of us who feel drawn to this movie are being drawn to something that got obliterated. And it's like that thing of we wouldn't love, hiss on music if we still had hiss on music. We love it because it sounds like something that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Imperfect comparison, but I just love this. I love this movie because I am mourning this movie, and I don't want to see another. I don't think there is anything majestic to a Marvel movie. I think this is a majestic picture.
It's fantastic because it's like now it's really bringing it home for me, because I'm like, oh, nostalgia works in different ways, and like you see film in this like beautiful way that like opens my eyes a lot. And part of the reason that I wanted to do this was just to learn about like how you interpret things and storytelling through this genre that you connect to and understand in this really deep and significant way. And I think, for me, I don't know where I was going with that anymore.
Well, it sounds like you were agreeing with me wholeheartedly on every point, and that I won the debate. So put it in the time capsule quick.
No. Oh, I was going to say, who is the strongest performance in these films?
What?
Who is the strongest performance?
No, I heard you. That's a silly question. It's Jack films. Sparrow. It's Johnny Depp as Jack Sparrow.
Are you a Johnny Depp fan?
That's a very loaded question in this day and age.
Sorry, are you a Johnny Depp fan in context of these films?
I am an admirer of a lot of what he has done, and I think a lot of his performances are crazy garbage. I think this, again, it's just lightning in a bottle. Like a lot of it is attributable
like a pirate,
to him,
and he made everybody laugh for a good long time.
Well, no, I mean, this Jack Sparrow in the first movie was intended to be a straightforward action hero. And Johnny Depp said, "I'd like to play him as a drunk rock star." Yeah, that is very much Johnny Depp's conception of the character. And
a drunk rock star. That's fucking awesome.
He was inspired by Keith Richards, which is why they brought Keith Richards in to play his dad. He was always great performance. He was always channeling Keith. Yeah, and I think I have like plowed through my closing argument, and I've like come through to the other side. So I'm now just sort of doing odds and ends. There are not a lot of other, I think, great performances in this movie. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think the bad guys are all doing good work. I think Bill Nighy and Jeffrey Rush are hamming it up, and that's a lot of fun. I think Orlando Bloom has never been good in anything.
Disagree. I think he's great in Lord of the Rings.
You think he's good?
I think he plays that character well. And I think he's cast well because you could argue he shouldn't. He doesn't excel at the roles like William Turner, where you're supposed to like root for his heart. But
or Elizabethtown.
I haven't seen it, but
you've never seen.
No, it just was always hated in context of me watching it. You know, it's like, hey, watch this. It sucks. Like, why?
No, why? Not good.
Yeah,
everybody you love Cameron Crowe.
Yeah, I know, but do I that much to watch? Like, We Bought a Zoo. Never seen it. Joke about it a lot.
Cute movie.
Cameron Crowe has some high highs. Don't get me wrong. But notorious low lows.
He does.
Closing argument, Cameron Crowe just isn't for everybody all the time. Pirates of the Caribbean 3 in theaters now.
I wish.
Yeah, they're bringing it back, the film print at the New Bev, Quentin Tarantino. The 70,
I wouldn't put it past
70
him.
millimeter. I was just watching a video of Tarantino talking about Dunkirk and talking about Tenet.
2 movies I've never seen.
Shut up.
I watched half of Tenet.
Shut
Are
up.
we still
You've
on the
never
podcast?
seen Dunkirk. Shut up.
I never watched Dunkirk. Are we still on the podcast
Yes.
or are we not on the podcast anymore?
Yes, because I want to tell you to see Dunkirk on the podcast.
Okay, Dunkirk.
Dunkirk.
On the podcast. Dunkirk on the podcast.
Dunkirk on the podcast.
So I am so thrilled, excited. I'm thrilled and excited, and mainly thrilled to have here on the podcast Fran Hoepfner, who is an editor at large with Brightwall Darkroom and the editor-in-chief of Fran Magazine, which you can find now on Substack, and is just a really excellent use of your time and hard-earned money, I can say, as a subscriber myself. And that's not only because I got very kindly linked one of my essays in the latest issue, which was very touching. Thank you, Fran.
Oh, I'm happy to. I only do it to get the shill then.
Yes.
Elsewhere. It's purely self-motivated at this point.
Perfect.
No, it's like I had to get it in there. I comb through all of my Twitter likes to look for stuff, which then just winds up being like an opportunity to indulge in stuff I've already read, to read it again, which is always wonderful, especially with your work that rewards multiple readings.
Well, thank you. That's certainly the goal, but you kind of count out the idea that anybody will ever actually do it. So I appreciate that. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about, Fran, you nominated for our time capsule Tana French's 2007 novel, In the Woods. Do we know if it's Tana?
Oh, that's a good question. I actually don't know. I feel like I should Google this.
Sure.
I'm going to lose my mind. Tana French.
Tana French, okay.
Tana French. We're good to go.
We're good to go. So we are talking about Tana French's 2007 novel, In the Woods. And before we get to it, I just like to ask Fran, where were you in 2007? Do you have any associations with that year?
Yeah, I mean, I was in high school. I was starting my junior year of high school, which I think was my favorite year of high school. Nice. In general.
Yeah.
It was like 2007 was probably the first year that adolescence didn't feel like the worst thing of all time. I think I started to kind of come into myself in 2007 and lay the foundation of maybe the person that I am now.
Congratulations on getting there by junior year of high school, which I certainly was not doing.
I mean, it was a rocky road till that point of multiple personalities, multiple interests all over the place. But 2007 felt like a really coherent year. Not trying at times, but a good one. And I was definitely reading a bunch, though not reading this book. I read this book last year for the first time, but it feels very 2007 to me in a nostalgic, looking back on culture in a big picture way type of thing.
Nice. So I read this book for the first time this year. So it's even more recent. I read this book for the first time in the last few weeks. So I have been wondering how we should shape this. What do you think is the right way to go through this? Should we try and kind of march through the book in plot order?
Yeah, we can do that.
Because it's got, I will say, one of the great sort of hooks, and they get you right from the beginning with what the narrative hook of this is going to be. And then they just leave you hanging all the way at the end.
Yeah, which I like about that. That's like one of my favorite aspects of this book, even though it pisses me off.
Mm-hmm. It's like the intellectual side of me really admires and appreciates it and is like, finds that very quote unquote fulfilling. And then the emotional side of me is so frustrated.
Yeah. And I've read a couple of the Tana French books now. So it's interesting to see where all these like protagonists stack up against each other and what they're like and what they're all bringing to the table. They're all kind of the same book, but not really. And In the Woods has just felt the most remarkable to me. And maybe it's because it's the first one that I read, but even so, I think it feels like the most daring in its structure and themes.
Okay. Well, how are the structure and themes daring in your mind?
I think in having this framing device of, so it's about a cop, a guy on the Dublin murder squad, named Rob, right?
He goes by Rob, yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, he changes his name, but right. So I would mix up which was which. But he goes by Rob, and he had some incident in his childhood where he was somehow either a victim or a perpetrator, if not just implicated in an extremely violent crime with two of his childhood friends that there is no resolution towards whatsoever. And then 20 odd years later, another violent crime happens in the same woods. And so he's forced to reckon with this horrible, violent, mysterious, disturbing thing from his past that we receive no resolution on whatsoever, right. Which feels honest to that experience as he understands it. And like, that's something that's clearly so buried and blocked that the time span of this book would probably not be able to provide him with the clarity of understanding.
Right. So it's a little bit of backstory. I read a couple of interviews with Tana French in the last couple of days. She had been an actor, had been living in Dublin, I think born in America, and had moved around and living in Dublin since the 90s. And between acting jobs was doing a little archaeological work like you do when you don't have anything going on. And she was working on this archaeological dig next to the woods and saw the woods and said that would be a great place for kids to play. And then just had the thought, what if 3 kids went into the woods and only one of them came out? And what would that do to you growing up? So she'd never written anything before and just got sort of hooked on that idea. And so that becomes the, it's interesting to me that that's the basis of the story, is that emotional through line of him trying to reckon with what this has brought up. And then the actual case itself seemed to her relatively sort of late in the game in terms of outlining and coming up with it all. So, but the actual case at the heart of the story, would you like to do this or shall I? It's pretty brutal.
Yeah, so the body of a 12-year-old girl named Katie Devlin is found in the woods. I can't really remember what's happened to her. She's hit over the head.
Yes, the victim is Katie Devlin, who's a 12-year-old ballet prodigy who is found in the woods at this archaeological dig on top of what is essentially an altar stone from some ancient druidic cult of some kind. And she has been just brutally killed. And so the main characters here are Rob and Cassie, who are partners on the Dublin Murder Squad. And this is the first of, there must be like 5 or 6 Dublin Murder Squad books.
Yeah, there's 6 of these.
Which I had initially presumed, so every book is Rob and Cassie on another case. And so that was just, we're following what is I think, classical in at least some of these pulp subgenres, the partnership that is too close and verges on a romantic partnership. And I was like, all right, so this is the dynamic. This is where we're going. And then as it starts to break down over the course of the story, this partnership between them, I had to go and look it up and be like, so Rob is just out after this one, which cast a whole sort of more mournful quality over the whole rest of the book as you realize this is the last case that they are working together. Yeah.
Things, having read a couple of these now, tend to not end in a good place for their lead cop, in a way that I think prevents it from becoming a little too Law and Order SVU hero worshipy.
Sure.
Is that these have pretty mournful, we can't go back from this type of endings that leave them in kind of a real kind of point of no return. And so I felt similarly sad that it's like, okay, is that the end of Rob? I haven't read enough of these to know if there is some like flit of Rob walking across like a street later on, and one of them is like, oh, there's Rob who used to work with us, but he's not cropped up in any of the others I've read. So this is all we get of this guy and his horrible past in this horrible case.
Right. Have you read The Likeness, the follow-up that follows Cassie?
No, that is the book I can't get my hands on. My friends who love this book are like, that's the best one. Huh. None of them have the copy on them because they've lent it out to someone else. And I have been a real stickler of late about not buying new books. And it's always out from the library. So this is my white whale, even though it's a totally accessible novel.
Okay. I wonder if the demand for it has had to do with this was adapted into a TV series for Starz within the last couple of years. Have you seen any of that?
No, I've heard it's awful.
I fell asleep to the first of the 5 episodes over like the last 5 nights. So it's not gripping enough to keep me from falling asleep. They mash up the stories of In the Woods and The Likeness so that they're happening sort of at the same time. And so Cassie is consistently being pulled away from Rob and this shared case of theirs and to go off on this whole other case.
Interesting. I had always been told the big draw of The Likeness was its similarity to The Secret History, a novel that I really love. And a lot of my friends who are big Donna Tartt heads are like, well, this got me into Tana French, and then I went back and read all the Tana French ones. So I think it's that things going awry at a small school, evil preppy kids type of thing. But yeah. My
parents are career prep school teachers, and so I'm well familiar with plenty of evil preppy kids, including myself.
They're out there. Yeah. They're everywhere.
So, we can march through the plot of the mystery, the sort of central noir, but it is ultimately secondary, clearly to Tana French's interest.
Totally.
And a little bit to the book's overall effects, because it seemed to me fairly clear fairly early on sort of what the game was from maybe halfway. Which, to tell the listener, the sister of the victim is an older teenager, like 18 or 19. Crucially, actually, she turns out to be 17, who has believed that her sister was getting too sort of big for her britches with her promising ballet career and was poisoning her with what she said was secret ballet juice or whatever that would make her a better ballet dancer, but was actually poison. And has then enlisted one of the archaeologists from the dig to murder her sister on her behalf. And so, as I say, Rosalind, the sister, is acting really shady really early on. And
I was so blindsided by this reveal, but maybe because I'm more willing to understand that a 19 or 17-year-old is just kind of crazy.
Yeah, well, she is kind of crazy.
But not sort of lethally crazy, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I was pretty surprised, but it sort of didn't matter to me also. The resolution of this case was not important, which is also, I think, paramount to the writing of it, that it's an effective novel about 2 people and it doesn't all rely on what the big reveal is.
So, yeah, the reason that it sort of jumped out to me is it seems pretty clear that she's playing Rob and is sort of using her the allure that she has over him to sort of manipulate his perception of the case. And that is then what I found interesting was it doesn't become as clear to you as it does to me, but once it became clear to me, the question is, it's not the mystery of how the murder went down so much as it's the mystery of how he is going to respond to everything falling apart around him. And as this incredibly unreliable narrator, which I read also in interviews, French is really drawn to unreliable narrators because, we are all unreliable in reporting our own stories. And something I really loved that I saw was she brings her acting work to her work as a writer. And so she's much more interested in what's happening, sort of what the motivations are for every character and how that is influencing their conversations with other characters, and less so the sort of structural shoe leather portion, which it does feel like she just blasts through so much of the sort of typical detective work that you would get in other novels.
Yeah, definitely. She really hones in on what it looks like and sounds like when someone is lying, and the ways in which they are lying.
Yeah.
The one that I'm nearly done with now, The Trespasser, has like a sort of beat by beat breakdown of tone shifts in a witness interview of like, okay, here's when someone's being withholding. Here's when they're happy to distract by having more information on something that doesn't matter. And to see that element of it, I mean, it reminds me of the parts of like Mindhunter that I really enjoyed, which was this kind of psychological profiling based on character, based on the phrasing of sentences, based on body language. And though In the Woods is quite graphic, I don't think it's indulging in how graphic it is. It's kind of like, yeah, this is horrifying. It's terrible. And let's try to move past it rather than continuously come back and describe it.
Well, a huge question is sort of how you identify a sociopath. Is that the term they use? Sociopath or psychopath consistently. Mm-hmm. And so then it becomes about looking at the world around you and trying to profile psychopathy, which Rosalind, the central sister, becomes an example of. So where do we go from there?
Where do we go from here? Yeah. I think that's interesting in this era of 2007 literature also because you're on the precipice of widespread social media usage in which I would say garden variety sociopathy becomes not only commonplace but encouraged.
Yeah.
And because we're before all of that, I think there's something a little bit more interesting to it. I was thinking a lot about 2007 as like a bridge in my tastes, personally. Even though I didn't read this book until last year. But that this is the kind of thing, this kind of story would appeal to me as an adult reader would have never crossed my mind in 2007. And my mother reads books like this all the time, really loves like detective literature. And that's like something I'd been quite dismissive of up until maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And now I'm like, these are great. I'll pick one of these up anytime and I'll have a good time with it.
Well, I kind of was the same way. And then my gateway was Dennis Lehane, and mm-hmm. His work has been adapted as Mystic River, Gone Baby Gone. Ben Affleck did another one. Was it Live by Night? That seemed like it totally came and went. But typically he does these sort of pulpy noir, but that they're taken as literature. Sort of they manage to straddle those lines. And French describes Mystic River as being what she thinks the sort of wave that she was able to ride with getting her stuff discovered. And it's that insistence on not choosing a lane between genre and literary fiction. And I don't know about you. I know you've done a lot of writing workshops. Genre fiction tends to be mm-hmm. a term that is denigrated by a lot of writing teachers. It is
totally.
Yeah, it is anathema to serious fiction, and that is a bummer. I can see how in some cases maybe it would need to be just sort of a parameter established in some writing workshops, but I don't get it to a certain extent, because what is realistic literary fiction if not its own genre? And
yeah, when you apply for a lot of these upper level writing programs, they say don't apply with genre fiction.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, well, what do you mean by that precisely? And that's usually the question is like, I think the parameters to define this kind of fiction are as loose as they've ever been. And, someone argue like, well, you can't do fantasy or you can't do sci-fi or you can't do mystery unless you give us the whole thing. Because if we won't actually know if it works until we read the whole thing. But I think it's pretty apparent what's good writing and what's bad writing.
Right.
With 3 pages of any genre. But yeah, this is still quite denigrated, though people are coming around on it, perhaps. I don't know. It's hard to say. I was thinking about like a lot of people higher ups in my master's program really loved Wolf Hall, but I consider that to be genre fiction, that sort of historical beat by beat. I don't know. It's like pulp history to me. And I don't know that that's any more or less literary than a Tana French book at the end of the day.
Right. Yeah. Or what is it about sort of if there's a spaceship in it, then it is anathema in some people's view to good prose. this is just this is an axe that I feel the need to grind every time I have the opportunity. So sorry, I don't have an actual take or how it relates to this. It just drives me a little bit nuts.
Oh, no, it's all good. I was going to say the other thing is once we all got into the program that we were in, no holds barred. People turned in genre stuff all the time. It was totally fine. No one was mad about it as long as the writing was good. So that there's some barrier to acceptance with it, or they'll be like, you know, there are sci-fi writing workshops, go to one of those. But I think having a strong foundation, I don't know, in general literary practice is important regardless of genre.
And characterization can be carried across whatever genre line you feel like. Mm-hmm. So, with that in mind, I guess we should put a button on the actual mystery and the core of the story in case anybody's using this as their cliff notes and don't feel like reading the book itself.
Yeah, if any high schooler
for their Tana French paper.
Tuning in. That's right.
So I mentioned it's very significant that Rosalind is 17 because they managed to get a confession out of her via Cassie, who wears a wire. And, well, I guess I didn't mention the other significant change that happens in here is the very close partnership between Rob and Cassie is upended when they do sleep together. He is sort of fallen apart so significantly from trying to use this case as the way of recovering his own memories of his own trauma that he ends up sort of so psychologically vulnerable that they transgress this boundary that they were never supposed to transgress. And then he is completely unable to be cool and ruins their entire relationship over that mistake as he perceives it. And so they soldier on through the case, and Cassie is able to get this confession out of Rosalind, who then it turns out to be inadmissible because she is 17 and Rob did not check her age properly enough. And I am still thinking emotionally I'm thinking in an emotional way about the emotional reaction I had to the beat at the end where Cassie is wired up and sounds like she is in trouble and sounds like she is being attacked by Rosalind. And so everybody who is listening from the sort of van nearby needs to make a run for it to help her. And she had built up this connection between them so effectively and had so effectively devastated me by the unraveling of it that, I don't know, it really got a surge out of me when he is running to her.
Their relationship is what I love most about this book. And they both feel like such individual, relatable, I hate that word as sort of a value metric, but they just feel like real people. And their relationship feels so minor, but in a good way. Like they are coworkers with sexual tension. They are each other's only friend in a real sense. And her building up the will we won't we is great and kind of fun. And then the second you sort of wish for it to be more, it all gets kind of yanked away without a lot of further analysis. And it crumbles in this really equally believable and heartbreaking and, I don't know, anticlimactic kind of way. In a fashion that feels devastating and frustrating, and that if they had figured out just how to be in the world together, either romantically or sexually or not, that both of them would, I don't know, feel better.
Which she is giving him every opportunity to do. She seems completely able to move on from this, and it's him sort of falling all over himself in a very male binary way of thinking, I can't be in a relationship right now, so now I can't even look at her or talk to her in any way.
Yeah, it really exposes more than any of his mysterious flashbacks. The dissolving of this relationship kind of exposes how messed up Rob is.
And that is what is so confusing about how they approach the TV show is she doesn't have much of a life aside from this case, which is sort of makes sense in the way that it is painted. She doesn't have another thing going on that's pulling her focus from him, which lets her be this incredibly devoted supporting character, and that devotion is so thoroughly betrayed by him. in a way that's not as impactful if you're mostly seeing him in isolation and her in isolation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think where Tana French succeeds in general is the functioning work relationships of a lot of these people on the murder squad. I came into these books at a time where I think there was kind of a push to see and hear from less cops, and that sort of, like I said, the broader like law and orderification of everything has not been a net good. Yeah. But I see these as a just different sort of exercise in relationship writing a lot of the time. And maybe it's because I don't find the actual mysteries at the heart to be that complicated or that twisty. And, you know, like they are sort of the quality of a lot of airport paperback mysteries, which is to say they're going to throw a lot of red herrings at you. And it's usually either going to be the first easiest or the second easiest explanation. But I think the character journeys at the heart of these feel the most lived in and propulsive, which you can do also when you're jumping around from character to character. Like if we had Rob for 6 books, you couldn't kind of afford yourself this kind of quick descent into, I don't know, anxiety and nostalgia.
Well, it was hard for me not to compare this to the series by Dennis Lehane that Gone Baby Gone was taken from. And I think it is really... Did you see that movie?
No, I actually haven't seen any of those Lehane adaptations.
Oh, well, I think they're awfully good, but I'm also from Boston, and so I just have a duty to defend them.
They're playing right into your hand.
Exactly.
No, I think I would really love Gone Baby Gone. I mean, I tend to like... That's directed by Ben Affleck, right?
Directed by Ben, starring Casey, yeah.
That's right. I tend to find him a better director than many.
Well, that's a very brave opinion to have.
That's sort of me acting as an ally to the city of Boston.
Good.
To say that.
I appreciate that. I can't even think of what he has. I guess he did Argo, you know what? I take back my snottiness. He's made some good movies.
The Town. I like Argo. I have no beef with Argo.
I had
a great time
take on Argo. That's my problem.
Well, yeah, fair enough. But yeah, Argo. Remember Argo?
I do. You know, Argo ahead. Why not? That's my take.
Yep.
You're duty bound to make an Argo pun. At least I am. And then he did that other Lehane adaptation that I don't know anything about. But it's interesting that he picked the story that looks the most like a fundamental unraveling of the central partnership, and then kind of ignored the serialized stuff because it just makes for a more sort of hefty and impactful story if you know that you don't know that you have 5 more books sort of to show that the resolution will be resolved.
Yeah.
So Tana French does know what happened to Rob. I discovered that in an interview. She knows what happened in his childhood.
I'm glad she knows.
Do you feel like there's an impact there on the story as a whole?
Oh.
Do you feel like you can tell?
I mean, I also didn't look that up until after I finished reading. That's a good question. It probably works so well because she knows.
So why are you glad she knows?
That's a good question. A lot of writers don't know what they're talking about. Because I think Rob's unraveling would feel phony otherwise. And I think, you know, trauma gets used as this like buzzword of like, oh, he has trauma from this. He has anxiety from this. He has depression from this. And with something like this book where the core mystery is so fundamentally tied to what originally happened that we don't know, then the whole thing would just feel false. It would feel like a one level type of thing where it's about the mystery at hand. It's about poor Katie Devlin. And instead it's allowed to be about Rob. I guess that's the answer. It's like, I'm happy she knows because then the book is about Rob and not about Katie Devlin.
That's a good answer. Do you feel like you have any suspicion what it could be? Like, do you see the breadcrumbs there?
No, I don't have a clue, honestly. It all feels very owl theory to me, if you're familiar, from The Staircase.
I'm not. Can you say more?
Yeah, so The Staircase, big murder mystery documentary, of which there were then 2 more follow-up documentaries. Now there's going to be that HBO show.
Right.
Huge universe, but, the core question of that was, like, did this guy push his wife down the stairs? And then there was this late emerging theory, I think 2 documentaries into the 3 documentary journey, where someone was like, her injuries are consistent with that of an owl attack, and randomly there are owl feathers kind of in their home. So there's this like off the wall theory that maybe like an owl got into their house, clawed at her, and then she lost her balance and fell down the stairs. Something like that. And so the description of like what happened to them as kids all feels very owl theory to me, where like it's all a little too crazy, and I'm sure it's way more simple than that, but I'm so distracted by like the crazy elements of it that I can't parse what the normal ones would be.
Well, it's the description of Rob when he is found is so perversely specific. It's the shoes are full of blood that's not his.
The shoes are full of blood, yeah. And so I mean, I have this suspicion that there's some animal element involved just because it feels so animalistic.
Sure.
What's great about that HBO trailer for the Staircase series is that there is a single shot of an owl. And I was like, okay, so they're throwing one to the owl heads.
Cool.
Thank God. It would be crazy if that's what the fictionalized version decided to go with. They're like, we're committed to the owl theory. Yeah, there's a really base kind of animalistic. And I think what's crucial or what's compelling is the archaeological aspects and the druid aspects of what occurs in the woods, because it does have this occultish undertone where they're wondering if there is some not magical but maybe attempts at like a dark magic that have allowed these things to happen. And so I think that the core elements of both these murders or violent crimes taking place around like a former holy site feels significant and interesting and particularly evil.
Yeah, and something that you can include in your Irish and UK fiction a lot more easily than you can in your American fiction, and I always appreciate.
That's a good point.
Yeah, you can do it here, but there's going to be a problematic element probably, like when Stephen King tries to bring in his ancient Indian burial grounds in half of what he writes.
Stephen King, love that guy. Gotta love him.
Well, you gotta love him because he helped Tana French get her foothold in our consciousness, apparently.
Did he?
One of his blurbs, yeah, I guess.
Oh, wow. I'm named for a Stephen King character, so I have to, like...
Wait, who are you named for?
Fran Goldsmith from The Stand.
From The Stand. Oh, my God. That's a good one. That's a good character.
She's funny. I finally read that book, and I was like, she's annoying. But,
Well, she worked for me when I was
art.
15 or whatever.
Well, that's what my mom said. My mom was like, she's not annoying when you're, 19 years old.
Yeah, there you go.
Fair enough.
So is there anything else? Anything we haven't hit from Tana French's In the Woods?
I think just that her work feels quite formative to the Gillian Flynn?
I'm not sure. Let's leave it a mystery.
We'll leave it a mystery. And the Big Little Liesification and... a lot of what I think of as like girl noir, which is quite a reductive way of thinking about it, but these really character focused, unreliable world mysteries that I think are not really quite as bogged down in the violence as they are the domestic relationships. And I was really slow to come to crime narratives and mystery narratives. I don't like violence. I'm pro peace, actually.
Good.
Rare these days, and I don't really like engaging with this kind of stuff. But I feel like as my tastes developed, I really came into this like semi-pulpy, female-oriented, if not driven, type of mystery stuff. And I don't know if it's because I'm simply being pandered to, and sometimes when I catch it, I'm mad. But if I can not catch that I'm being pandered to, I'm thrilled about it.
That's what makes good pandering.
That's good pandering. And so I came into this finding it way closer to some of those pulp works than I have others in the past. And I don't know, there's a reason I feel more inclined to pick up a Tana French than a James Patterson. And it could just be that the Patterson books are bad. And I don't even know that he fully writes them himself anymore, so much as they're dictated to an intern or something like that. But when I was looking at, when we talked about doing this, I Googled books that came out in 2007. And the book of 2007 was Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, a book that was monumentally important to me that year. But if I think about the narratives that continue to fascinate me and compel me and draw me back into what they're trying to say and how they're trying to work as fiction, it's stuff that's way closer to the work of Tana French than it is to Harry Potter.
Well, good for any number of reasons.
It's good, but I think there's a whole reading audience whose tastes took Harry Potter and then looked for work that was more like that rather than just the gateway to reading that it was initially kind of promised to be. I mean, I could have done a whole 45 on sort of what has happened to J.K. Rowling, but it's not that interesting.
I was going to say, if you'd like to, by all means, but
it's not interesting to me. And she eats up a lot of oxygen, but I just think about the kind of reader I was in 2007 versus the kind of reader now, and the kind of books that similarly keep me up way past my bedtime reading. But the French books are just far more character driven and nuanced and thoughtful, I think, than that terrible little wizard.
Yes. Well, the only other one that I've read is The Searcher, which is at this time the most recent book of hers. And I was expecting something that was a beach read. I was expecting another Gone Girl, because that was the way that people were talking about it. And it is instead just this very mournful character study that happens to have a mystery attached to it. And that is just, it's less immediately sort of grabby and more sort of satisfying in a lasting way. And so I'm grateful to her for giving us those.
The only other one I own that I haven't read yet.
It is quite good.
I'm glad to hear that you've liked it. I've heard both her standalone novels are quite good. I'd like to just do the sweep at this point. The Faithful Place really put me off, but I'm going to use that as that's an outlier.
What's wrong with that?
That's a me problem. I think that protagonist is just so profoundly unlikable that it became a real slog to do 400 pages alongside him. And he's supposed to be pretty brash and unreliable, but I was just like, I'm fucking sick of this guy. I hate this guy. I don't care if things work out for him. And I found that mystery too easy as well.
Gotcha.
So, but those are me problems. A lot of people I know really like that one too. So,
well, I think I'm gonna go straight on to The Likeness, because if that's the best one, and I miss the characters already, and even if I can only get one of them, I'll take it.
Yeah, I'm hoping by the time this comes out, I will have read it.
Okay, and you can let people know what you actually thought of it.
Yeah. It's the one material good on my birthday list this year. So
oh my God.
I think my birthday will have passed by the time this airs.
And aside from that, it's just peace and good deeds and all of that.
Yeah, peace, love, happiness, kindness, laughter, of course, hugs.
I'll get you laughter for your birthday. Mine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, Fran, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me.
A pleasure. Is there anything that you want to direct our listeners to or plug?
That's such a good question. I'll plug Fran Magazine, as it's, just rollicking into Q2 of the financial year. And I will plug a Criterion Channel subscription, because I love to plug it. It's the best money you can spend outside of a Fran Magazine subscription.
That is true. I support both of those plugs wholeheartedly. It is such a huge pleasure to get a new Fran Magazine in the inbox, because it's just there's nobody more fun to read than Fran.
Thank you.
And
thank you so much.
It's so exciting now that we just get it delivered to us.
That's right. I've made it easy.
Yes, I appreciate that. All right. Well, Fran, thank you again.
Thank you, Ethan.
What a Year is produced by me, Ethan Warren, with original music by my co-host Ryan Pollie. Thanks to Brian Rosemeyer for the mixing and mastering, and Shane Butler and the good folks at Portray Me for our artwork. Please take a few minutes to follow us on your podcasting app of choice, and while you're doing that, if you could leave a rating and a quick review, it really does make a difference. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at What a Year Pod. On our next episode, we'll be talking about Animal Collective's Strawberry Jam and Julie Taymor's Across the Universe, plus the poetry collection Something Bright Then Holes with guest Hannah Bonner. It's going to be a good one.